Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to kick it off like stand up as we always do. 3 different meetups. Tomorrow we've got Open Hack, and strongly encouraging you guys all to attend if you can make it. That is at 6 p.m. down at Common Space. There is also a meetup sponsored by or hosted by Women in Coding, all about AI and how AI is used in development. So if you are available to attend, I have linked that. That is a virtual online event. And then finally, we are going to have our first optional office hours. So if you're feeling like you need a little bit more help, you can tune in virtually, or you can come down to Common Space where I will be. And that is a great opportunity to kind of hang out there afterwards with your fellow students and work on things. So I am going to kick off a quick poll. I know I have polled you guys on this already, but I think that availability changes, so I thought it wouldn't hurt to repoll you guys on that. Please select all of the available times that you are available if you are interested in attending office hours. I will not hold it against you if none of those times work for you, or that you're not feeling like you need the office hours. That's totally fine. Just check off whatever times work for you and go ahead and vote in that poll for me.
All right, it's for this week, right?
This weekend, yes. And as the weeks go on, I will definitely hold more office hours, but just want to give everyone an opportunity to get a little bit more help if they need it. Last call for voting. Going once, going twice. Awesome. Looks like you guys are trending to Friday at 6 p.m. So Friday, 6 p.m., I will be down at Syracuse Syracuse Common Space, same place we're having Open Hack. Bring questions. I've got nothing on the agenda. Nothing, no additional content to teach, no specific things that I want to go over. I am just there for you guys to answer questions. So I will be down at Common Space at 6 p.m. I will also be opening this link as well. You are welcome to hang out after Common Space or use the Zoom link after office hours if you want to work with your fellow students. That is totally fine. I'll be there for at least an hour Friday night just to answer questions, and in the Zoom room as well. And then from there, it's up to you guys to decide if you want to kind of hang out and work on things together, or peace out after that. That's totally fine. We won't be taking attendance. So it's no big deal if you cannot make it. These are totally optional. Any questions about Open Hack, the AI discussion from Women in Coding, or the office hours?
About that Women in Coding AI meet, is
Yes.
that more of a discussion, or can I just be a fly on the wall and listen to it?
Totally fine to be a fly in the wall. I'm not quite sure how they're hosting the discussion. I think they're going to kind of have a loose agenda and kind of steer the conversation. But it is virtual and it's totally fine to join in. They may, ask you to introduce yourself, but other than that, totally fine just to listen in and kind of hear the discussion. I am not an expert in artificial intelligence by any means, but I am certainly interested in where that discussion goes. So I will be there. Great way to kind of get out in the network, hear what's going on. ChatGPT kind of took the tech industry by storm, and now it's nice to see discussions happening all around that. So totally fine to join in, even if you don't think that you've got a lot to contribute to it. I think it will be an interesting discussion. Okay, moving on, let's dive into our stand-up. So what did we learn yesterday? We saw double ampersands for and then we saw the double vertical bars for or. We got our first exposure to for loops, right? Which may have may have surprised you a little bit on their complexity. Do not worry. I spent a couple hours this afternoon building a presentation together to help go over those concepts. So we're going to dive into for loops a little bit deeper tonight as well. We started using if statements for our conditionals, right? And that's where we started using what we call the logical operators to see if, hey, if this number is greater than something or less than something. We started getting into a little bit more syntax where we did a triple equal to see if whatever was on the left side of the equal was equal to the right side of the equal. And then we combine that with our if statements or our else if statements in order to control what sections of code we're running. We learned about I++. Plus is just an incrementer, right? It's the same thing as saying I is now equal to whatever I is plus 1 onto that. And so that is what we call an iterator or an incrementer, where we're able to keep track of how many times a loop has run. We learned about the two different ways to access data inside of an object. We saw our dot notation, where we can use the key that is inside the value. The key that is inside the object to get access to that data. And we also saw the bracket notation, which allows us to either pass in a string or a dynamic key, basically using a variable in order to access information in that object. We learned about nesting objects as well, and how we can nest objects in objects. We can even nest objects in arrays or arrays in objects, right? Those are all kind of interchangeable, and that allows us to have a lot of different data formats. We're going to see a nested object a little bit later tonight and get a little bit more experience about that. We learned a couple methods on arrays, right? Push and shift. Which allows us to remove items from the beginning of arrays or add new items onto the end of an array. Lots of different array methods that you can use to manipulate an array, but we just got the first intro to those. Anything else from yesterday? We also learned about for of loops. Thanks for bringing those up as well, right? So a traditional for loop gives us a little bit more control, but it's a little bit more complex to write, right? It allows us to skip over different items or start a for loop at a different point, compared to the for of loop, which is now much more widely used when all we want to do is get access to each individual item in an array, right? So we're saying for each one of the items in this array, what do we want to do? And so we're going to go over those as well in the slides coming up, just to get a refresher on how all of that is working. Anything else from yesterday? Okay. I'm going to ask for you guys to hold off on questions on loops in particular until we're done with the review. Once I finish up that review, I will open the floor to questions. We're going to touch on functions a little bit. We're going to write our last section of our playground code just to see how everything is working. And then we're going to get into a 10-step challenge for you guys. So we're going to use the last half of class and what we call the reverse classroom style, where you guys have your homework assignment and you're working on your homework in class so that when those questions come up, you're able to ask them without having to schedule a one-on-one or come down to the office hours. These challenges are meant to be at this nice checkpoint level, right? Where you should be feeling challenged to be able to complete them, but you can use all of the code that we've written in class today and the past 2 days in order to kind of build your skills and try them out. This is meant for you to say, all right, am I kind of getting these concepts? Can I complete these challenges? Or do I need to rely on the cheat sheets a little bit more? Do I need to do a little bit of free code camp homework to kind of push myself? With all of that said, this computer science week is kind of intended to exist in a vacuum. You may be learning these concepts and be like, all right, I think I'm getting them. I'm following along. I'm able to complete the challenges. I still don't feel like I know JavaScript. That's okay. Next week we have DevOps, and then when I come back, it is headfirst into our project-based curriculum. We just start building things with JavaScript, and we continue layering up on top of that. So we're going to learn a little bit about the document object model. We're going to build our first JavaScript that runs in the browser. We're going to build our first user interface where we can listen for a user interaction event and then make that happen and make something happen on the page. And then we're going to start building from there and building out web apps. So I don't want you guys to feel like at the end of this week, you have to be a JavaScript expert. I don't want you guys to feel that you feel like you have to know all of this or be able to build something on your own. The challenges at the end of class are meant to kind of be a little touch point for you guys to say, all right, am I getting these concepts enough in class with my notes to be able to complete them? If you can, then you're doing great. If not, you lean into those resources that I've got linked in the daily outlines. And also, I think they're labeled as week 7 pre-reading in Canvas, because those resources, find the one that works for you and don't feel bad about leaning on that resource. You're not going to learn JavaScript just from 12 hours a week in class, right? Using those resources is going to be super, super important for you to get it. But also know that we have 4 more weeks of JavaScript coming down the pipeline. We aren't immediately on to the next topic. What we're doing is taking the computer science concepts of loops and functions, which we're going to get into tonight, and variables and data structures and arrays. We're going to take all of that and start applying them hands-on, not next week, because Nathan is coming in and teaching you guys DevOps about how to deploy your site, how to get that on the internet, how to buy a domain name, how the domain name system works. All of that fun stuff is coming for you next week. And then the following week is when we dive into JavaScript hands-on projects, building things for real. With all of that said, I would like to do an overview of the capstone. So capstone is something that we have done from the very beginning. By the way, I've got all of this linked in the daily outlines, and I will also drop a link in the chat for you guys, both to the capstone project and to the daily outline, because I do have some links to slides on here in case you want to reference those. I also have all the meetups linked as well. Okay, so capstone. A capstone is going to be a full stack project. Now, I'm well aware that you guys have no idea how to make a full stack project right now. That's okay. Later on in the document, I have some expectations for you throughout the modules, throughout the different things that we're learning, to give you an idea of how far you should be on your capstone progress. So your capstone can be pretty much whatever you want it to be. It needs to have a front end. That front end is what the user is going to interact with. You guys have enough experience now to start thinking about building out your front end. We also have a backend. That's what the server is going to talk to. That's what's going to allow your capstone to be used by multiple users and be able to be deployed on the internet. And then finally, a database, right? There's got to be some interactive element of your capstone. Now, if you have a capstone idea in mind and have no idea how a database is going to integrate into it, or even if you need a database, that's totally fine. We can find a way to integrate a capstone into, a database into your capstone one way or another. It isn't a big deal if you have a idea that you're passionate about, but don't know how those components are going to integrate in yet. Choosing a project idea can be really hard, and students tend to either have they tend to be on a spectrum of having 15 different project ideas and not knowing how to narrow down to the one that they want to do. They are right in the sweet spot where they've got that one idea that they're passionate about, that they're excited to start building, or they're sitting here scratching their head going, I have no idea what I want to build, please help, right? It's okay to be anywhere in that spectrum, and a one-on-one can be really helpful for you to narrow down in on those ideas to figure out what exactly that you want to get going on, or think about some pain points. If you have no idea where you want to start, think about an app that you wish you always had, right? Or think about something that's a pain right now in your current daily life, either for you or for friends and family, that would make their life much easier if they had this website or this app that could make their life a little bit better, a little bit easier. You can also go back through, you guys are not the first cohort through this program, right? Our capstone projects have not changed much since cohort 1. We've gotten a little bit better at expressing requirements and making sure that you can have check-ins throughout the whole program, but the main idea of a capstone has not changed. So going back through previous graduation ceremonies can be a great idea to think about, hey, what have other people built? And maybe that's an idea for me, or maybe that's something that I can kind of vibe off of and go from there. Be prepared for your project to get a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller as you're working on it. What we're going to help you guys get towards is what we call the MVP, not the most valuable player, but the minimum viable product. Break those 3 words down, right? What's the smallest thing that we can make that is still viable enough that people will want to use it, and is a product overall that we can get out and not necessarily sell, but kind of show to someone the use of why they would want to use your website or your web app. That MVP is something that we're going to help you narrow down in on. You're going to have a lot of big ideas to get started on your capstone, and we're going to help you identify, hey, is this a feature that we really need to show off at graduation? Or is this iterative, right? Is this something that we can add on once you get the core features done and working? So we've got a couple links in here to MVP, about what an MVP is, how you can start narrowing down on it, a couple blog posts, a couple YouTube videos, all of that kind of stuff. We do have links to projects that have been built at hackathons that we have hosted in the past. Those projects were all created in a 24-hour period. So if you think about spreading that out over the entire course of what you're learning in the next 24 weeks, or 24 weeks total, I should say, that is a great idea to get inspiration from. And then we also have links to previous coding boot camps in here and what students have created for their capstones. Don't worry too much about the tech stack. We are going to be covering this in class, and it will become very clear. You should be excited about whatever you're learning, being able to apply that directly into your capstone to get practice with those concepts. So that will become more clear as we go. Okay. Pausing there. Any questions so far? Okay. So we will have 4 touch points that we spend a little under half of class going around the room, manually checking in with you guys. That is unfortunately anxiety inducing for some of you. That is okay. Everyone's going to be at a different level, and sometimes seeing where other people are at are going to give you inspiration of where you should be at on your project. So these 4 checkpoints are kind of where you should be at. I want you guys to go back into this document right before those checkpoints and say, hey, am I at this point with my capstone? So we are approaching this week 5 first touch point, right? And what we're saying there is we should have some planning documents done. It doesn't have to be anything formal. Everyone's are going to look a little different, but we want to have a requirements document. That is usually as simple as an outline, just bullet points in Google Doc. Although some people like to do it on sticky notes and just take a picture of their sticky notes. And we want to see a wireframe, right? Going all the way back to week 1, where we started wireframing out that car, or we did a portfolio wireframe, right? We want to see some visual thinking through of what do I want my app, my capstone, my website to look like. That is your first touch point, and that will be happening on 5/22. So not next week, but that following Monday, we'll be doing our first capstone check-in. I will randomly pull all the names of the people in class and assign an order, and you guys will go around, share your screen, and kind of show off your wireframe and your requirement stock. So that is coming down the pipeline for Monday, May 22nd. Also want to note that we are off Memorial Day for 5/29. And we also have other holidays already marked off on here, like Juneteenth and 4th of July, which we take a summer break and are completely off that week. So if you are wondering about holidays, they are all in the schedule. And all of this is linked in Canvas under not only the schedule and YouTube links, but also down here in the capstone requirements. That is the document that I'm showing off right now. And this where should I be in my project is going to be your most helpful go-to spot to make sure that you are staying up with your capstone. We do have an assignment due this week for your capstone. It is due on Sunday. And that is thinking about your wireframe. And that is basically what you're going to show off in addition to your requirements document on your 5/22 check-in. From there, the following check-in is all about having something built in your code, right? And this capstone project is not something that you want to be up on Sunday night realizing that you've got a check-in coming the next day. This capstone project is going to be worked on throughout your entire curriculum, right? This is all the way until week 24. We will be working on this, and it is certainly a curve, right? It kind of ramps up exponentially. The last couple weeks of the program are where we are getting the most work done on our capstone. For those check-ins, you'll be getting a 1, 2, 3 score. You're either meeting expectations, you are exceeding expectations, and it's clear that you're taking everything you're learning from class and applying it, or you'll get a 1, which is a below expectations, which is something that we can go back and revise as long as you're showing us, hey, I'm catching up, I'm getting there. That is totally fine. So that week 10 check-in, which is still over a month out, is going to be having your first files created. That's going to have some pages linked between your capstone pages. Maybe you have some form fields set up, whether that's a login page, whether that's a contact form, whether that's the ability to submit a new request, whatever it is in your project, that's okay. I'm not going to go into week 16 or the final check-in because they will probably make absolutely no sense to you until you learn those concepts. That's totally okay. But keep in mind of these capstone check-ins on the schedule. You may want to put those in your calendar so that you are not caught by surprise on them. I will also try and include them in the daily outlines as a reminder the weekend or a couple of days before those check-ins. They go a little slowly. I know that it can be a little boring because everyone in class goes around to do one of them, but it's a great way to see each other's progress and remember that you guys are all learning this stuff together. All of that said, do not think that if you are mysteriously absent for that day that you get off the hook and don't need to do the capstone check-in. I will hunt you down on Slack, and then you have to do a one-on-one check-in with me instead of doing it in front of all of your peers. And trust me, I have a little bit more scrutiny when it is one-on-one. So try to make those capstone check-ins. Do not think that you can dodge them. Trust me, I will find you and hunt you down and make sure that you show off your capstone progress as you're going. Goggin, what's up?
So I was gonna ask, so all right, hold on, let me get my train of thought together. Okay, so I was thinking if we make a portfolio website, for example, as a capstone project, can we just do work on that properly, or is it gonna be something else together? I heard you saying making a contact form, and I don't know what else should we add in there, because that's gonna be there anyways.
Yeah, so we are going to continue working on our portfolio sites to make it full stack as an in-class project. That is not to say that you can't do a portfolio for your capstone, but I would encourage you to think a little bit more outside of the box in terms of some project, some app that you would like to build. So you can do a portfolio for your capstone, but I would encourage you to think a little bit more on a project idea, whether that's something kind of social media leaning. We've had a couple people do projects on like directories of businesses around the area. Last cohort, we had someone do like a food bank directory. We've had a couple people do minority-owned business directories. That's one idea. You can do, last cohort, we had a student who was knew all about like hairstyling and wanted to basically build like a repository of information about that, and maybe a little quiz where you could fill out information about yourself, and then it would recommend different products for you. That's one idea. Couple cohorts ago, we actually had 2 people build a grocery store app. One, Doug, who you're going to have come on a little bit later as a TA, built a version of it where it used, it calculated the shortest route throughout the grocery store and showed you the most efficient way to get all the items on your list. And then Larry Goodman, who is also another graduate, he built a version of it where he used the Wegmans API and pulled in like 30,000 different items from the Wegmans database and made it easier to build a list based off of all of that real live production content. So you can do that. You could build your own blog site from scratch, but again, I encourage you to think a little bit more creatively on what you're trying to build. Ariel's project was a dating app for COVID, right? That was focused more around what information you had about whether you're vaccinated, or that was very relevant in cohort 2. Trying to think, are there any other standouts, Eva or Ariel, that you can think to share? Caitlin, who I think she's TAing at least 1 week, did a trash pickup app where you could enter your address and actually use the data sets that Jason showed off to show you what day your trash pickup was. Another really good one was an audio tour based off of GPS outdoors. So when you got to different destinations, like a walking tour, it would play a little audio clip about the building that you were looking at or the location you were at. Eva, I don't know if you want to chime in with anything.
Well, Karen did the archery app, the scoring app. That was quite an undertaking. She worked so hard on that.
Yeah, so Karen did one where it would kind of show you the different archery targets that you shoot at a competition, and you could put a little marker based off of where your arrow landed, and then based off of all of the rounds, it would like total up your score and give you the final there. So if you guys are golfers, you could build a little app that keeps track of your score as you're playing a game. That's totally fine as well. Last cohort, we had someone who built, who liked like playing pickup basketball games and thought it would be nice if there was a way to post, the type of sport that you were playing, where you were playing it, the time, any notes about it, and then you could kind of filter through all of those and see if people in your area were playing a game that you wanted to join in on. Lots of different options for you there.
Influencer sites are always big too. If you have some expertise, it doesn't have to be anything, you don't have to be a Kardashian. You could just, if you're an expert on, I don't know, mushrooms for some reason popped into my head. So, that's your thing. There's probably, probably at least 1 million people that are also interested in mushrooms around the world. And you get there's people that have products to cater to them, and you can get brand deals with them. And you might have your TikTok and your, other content that you create on your blog, as well as articles. There's all kinds of ways to monetize a site if you become well established as an expert or an influencer in that area.
And there's no requirement to keep on working on your capstone after graduation. But a lot of students do, right? That's a passion project for them. They want to keep on adding features. They want to keep on making that site a little bit better. And it doesn't have to be a business either. There's nothing saying that, there has to be a monetary path or something that you're going to sink hours into on this project after graduation. But it is entirely possible to monetize your project for sure after graduation. Whether that's a monthly fee that you're going to charge for the service, whether that's advertising and brand deals, whether that's, lots of different things. But for the capstone, you don't need to be thinking about business model and revenue sources and customers and all of that stuff. This is more kind of a side project that you're building throughout the cohort, not only to get practice on those concepts, but then really to have something to show off at graduation and say, hey, look what I've been able to build. Ariel, any comments you want to throw in on capstone?
I don't think so. I think you got most of it. I know a lot of us are still working on things or adding, like someone learned Python and added that. I think Latonia maybe went crazy with it after. Other than find somebody to check in with regularly as a TA or an instructor and stick with it, because you're going to want to put it off thinking you're so far behind on homework, and you're going to turn around and then that's going to be due. Working on it weekly is the only way it's going to get done in time. There is no waiting until the last minute with this. And stay out of tutorials, stay out of YouTube, build this React project in 3 hours, because it's going to be 7 hours. You're going to get halfway through it and it's not going to be what you're using. You need to actually know what you're doing to build off on this. So that's it. Just stay with it and find somebody to work you through it if need be. I had Max personally.
Good advice. Yeah, everything that you will need to learn in order to pull off a successful capstone will be covered in class. And I know some of you guys are kind of chomping at the bit for more material and starting to implement the things we're learning in class. Don't worry, that feeling will go away and you're going to feel like you're drowning in all the material and not know how to focus it. But that's okay. We will get there. Goggins, do you have another question?
So like she said, you can like do a blog on like mushrooms, for example.
Yep.
If we do that, like for example, how is it like using the APIs or anything that you guys want to be interact,
Yeah, so if you do a blog, what you'll end up building is a lightweight content management system behind the scenes. So you may want users to be able to post a comment on your blog post. Well, there's got to be some place for you to store those comments. That's going to be in a database. And there's got to be some way for you to take the information that the user is typing in and upload it to a server so it can get stored in your database. So that's an API call right there. You may say, oh, well, in order for them to write a comment, I want them to sign in first. Well, there's another API call that you have to make for password security and storing the users in the database. You could also say, well, I don't want users to be able to post comments, but I need some way to be able to manage the blog posts, right? So you're going to learn about making a basic, what we call the CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete in your database. Of how do I make a new post? When I make the new post, how does that API call happen to save it into the database? How am I able to edit or delete that post once it goes live? Maybe I want to build in some draft functionality. All of that are things to think about for a blog.
Where do I see the old project, just to get a reference real quick,
Yeah, so we've got them linked. Sorry. We've got it linked in 2 places. One, all of the previous Hack Upstate projects are here, but then we also have a link in this document to our past cohorts. I'm not sure why we don't have the cohort 4 presentations uploaded yet. But all of the different capstone presentations are linked here, so that you can watch through those videos. And we also have links to capstones down underneath the person's name. So if you click on their project, it will take you right to that time spot in the YouTube video where they demoed their project. And then we also have on our blog posts on Medium, I will drop the link to this. This is a blog post where we went through and documented all of the projects from last cohort. And I believe we have these from previous cohorts as well. So the blog post might be the easiest way to get to them. Ariel, I'm going to make sure you have edit access on this. And then can you add in those blog posts to this document as well for me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Palash, should I see a question?
Yes. So the second milestone for the capstone project is end of JS. Does that mean our capstone by then should have some component of JS in it?
Not necessarily. And the reason why we don't really have a check-in, our check-ins are kind of staggered a little bit, right? So at the end of HTML, you'll notice that I don't have any HTML requirements in here. That's to say, hey, let's give you enough time to learn all the concepts in class. And then when we move on to the next concepts, that's when you have a little bit of time to use the concepts that we had just finished up to apply them. So that you'll see on the JavaScript, the end of JavaScript, we don't really have any JavaScript requirements in this check-in. It's more HTML requirements. That kind of changes a little bit when we get to the end of React. That's when we want you to have those React concepts applied directly into your capstones at those points. So that's what I mean by it's kind of a ramp up. You're going to feel like you're making a little bit of progress, but not a ton of progress on your capstone. And then all of a sudden we hit that tipping point in the second half of the program. And all of a sudden it's like all capstone all the time. And all of these concepts that you're learning, you're going to want to apply directly in. React, and I'm glad you asked this question, is a framework that is specifically meant to make building web applications easier. So React makes it much easier to make API calls and to integrate information in from our database, as well as building reusable components so that we can write code once and use it on multiple pages in different layouts. So React, I think, is the point in the program where all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is all like stuff that I'm really excited about that I want to apply right into my capstone. And that's when the check-ins become a little bit more topical compared to what we had just completed learning. With that said, I don't want you to hold yourselves back. If you feel that you're learning stuff in JavaScript and you want to apply it in your capstone, even though that isn't a check-in point for whatever's coming up, it is totally okay to go above and beyond, start practicing with your JavaScript, start bringing in those concepts into your capstone. We love to see you kind of going above these expectations.
Right. So that too, I have a follow-up question.
Yep.
It's with this 30-day vanilla JS coding challenge that Westbos won
Yes.
in the resources. Is it like of the level that we are at now, or is it recommended to go through Free Code Camp or Code Academy JS first?
I would say that resource is one that I would hold off on either until the end of our JavaScript weeks, or when you feel like you have a little bit more understanding of Code Academy and or Free Code Camp. So I would say put that off for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. But after that point, yes, you totally can dive into those, start working on those as portfolio projects. Or if you already have some previous JavaScript experience, then you can dive into them now. But the West Coast one is probably the only resource I would say that you want to wait until the end of this module or the end of the JavaScript module before diving in and starting those projects.
Understood. Thank you.
Or worst case scenario, you dive in and you start looking at the first one and you go, dear God, I have no idea how to do any of these. And then you just, come back to them. That's also fine.
True. Thank you.
I can't remember, Ariel, I know you've gone through JavaScript 30, right?
Which one are you talking about? Sorry, I was putting
West
that.
Coast JavaScript 30.
I started to.
Are those, when he goes through those videos, are they more instructional videos or are they more, hey, here's the project, go do it?
I haven't gotten that far in.
Okay.
Could not help you. Could not help you. It took 3 hours to download. Couldn't tell you.
The JavaScript 30 ones are definitely project focused. I think you could probably do them without waiting for it, but they will certainly make more sense. We are covering the same material, the same concepts, and the projects that we're building will make it more easy to understand the JavaScript 30 projects. Okay, one other thing that I will touch on here is a lot of people like to document their progress as they're going, right? Laura's described this as a roller coaster ride. You may describe it as Tower of Terror drop on an elevator, or whatever you're feeling about it. You guys are learning a lot as you are going through this. So you may choose that you may want to share your progress as you go. Karen actually got her first job because she had blog posts that her first employer read and felt like they knew her a little bit better because she was sharing her progress as she was building her capstone, as she was going through careers in code. And so she just did blog posts throughout the whole program. And then at the end of it, her employer looked at that and went, wow, you're a great applicant because I saw your learning journey as you were going through it. You do not have to do a blog post or make a blog. This is totally optional. We've had some other students think about doing like a YouTube channel and kind of just recording videos based off of what they're learning. Some people have, like Karen created a podcast called Salt City Code that is now getting back off the ground, just about talking about their experiences, bringing on different guests. It's just something to think about if you are someone who likes to share your journey as you're going. Lots of different mediums for you out there. I won't go through the final presentation. We will have much more information about that as you get to the end of the program. Your final presentation is split down the middle. Half of it showing off your capstone. The other half of it is talking about your journey and everything that you have learned. Do not worry if you are not a major public speaker. We will have plenty of practice for you, especially the last week of class, and get you more information about what your final presentation needs and all of that stuff. Nothing to worry about for the next several months on that. Fake it till you make it, believe it until you achieve it. All great sayings, right? Your capstone is, you are in control. You are the one showing off what you want to show off there. There will be things that you do not get done. There will be things that you want to add to it that look great on the surface, but do not work under the hood. That is all okay. That is all part of software development. We have some links in here for project management, which I know we touched on just a little bit with Trello. Trello is a great way to manage your capstone because at a certain point, you're going to feel like you can't keep your head above water on your capstone. You're going to feel like there is a ton of stuff to do, and nothing feels better than having that under control. Yes, you may have a ton of things that you need to get done on your capstone, but if you have it in a project management system, whether that's Trello, whether that's sticky notes that you keep on your wall, whether that's a planner that you update every day, any of those are totally fine. They are all a great way to feel like you are more in control. Yes, there's always a ton of work to do as a software developer, but if at least you feel like you can see the forest through the trees, it makes it a lot easier to accomplish that. Couple readings about managing side projects as well. And then that is everything for capstone. Please, please, please use your one-on-ones for capstones. One-on-ones do not just have to be homeworks. They do not just have to be therapy sessions, unofficial therapy sessions. They can also be advice for capstones, whether you're coming in and going, I have no idea where to even start, whether you're coming in and saying, I've got 15 different capstone ideas, which one do you think is the best? Whether that's coming in and saying, okay, I have this idea. How do I get started? How do I create my first file? How do I start laying all of this out? Those are all great resources for capstones, and all of your TAs have gone through and made their own capstones. They've been through this journey. They have advice for you, whether you latch on to that one TA that or instructor like me, who is you feel like you're vibing with, you get a weekly check-in with them, or every other week, whether you schedule them as needed, or whether you kind of go to different instructors and TAs as you meet them throughout the program. All of that is fine, but know that you've got a support network for you. Sequoia, great question. Hack Upstate uses Medium for their blog. That is definitely the one that I recommend the most, because Medium is all about being simple, about not overloading you with user interface options and making it very easy for you to click the new story button, write your post, have a nice clean interface, post it, and have it out on the world. Two other popular ones are WordPress. Just be careful with WordPress, because as software developers, you're going to want to get into the theme. You're going to want to make it look exactly the way you want it to. And before you know it, you've spent 30 hours tweaking your website and haven't written any content yet. So WordPress is very powerful, but do not take that with a grain of salt, because it's very easy to fall down this customization and theming rabbit hole. Blogspot is one that Google offers. That's kind of in between WordPress and Medium. And there was another one I can't think of off the top of my head. All good options for you. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, one-on-ones are for you, right? These one-on-ones, you can take them wherever you want, whether that's coming in with looking at your code and being like, hey, can I go over these concepts? Whether that's saying, hey, I'm overwhelmed and you just need me or a TA to go through with you and go, all right, let's just brainstorm all the different things that you're feeling overwhelmed about. Maybe let's plan a couple of those out. Are you an outline person? Are you a project management person? Are you a sticky person? Let's tackle that feeling of overwhelmed, right? Because I personally find the best way to manage that overwhelmed feeling is to project manage your way through it. Ariel might completely disagree with me and have a different technique, and that is why you are welcome to schedule with any of our TAs, because everyone is going to have a little different advice and experience with you.
I did mention that they need to schedule with you as well, because you also can keep up with where they are and what they're not understanding in ways that I can't, or Latonia, or whoever cannot. There are some things, every TA has a different thing that they are better at. JavaScript is not my thing, but SQL is. Everybody has something different, but Max has made the curriculum, is teaching the curriculum. He doesn't bite. I give him a lot of crap, but I go to him for my problems. So always, if you have to schedule with him, and he's not going to yell at you or anything, because as long as he knows you're behind, he can get you back on track.
And the other thing is, don't feel like because you're not getting it in class, you can't come to me for a one-on-one. Trust me, I know another way of saying what I taught in class. Yeah, the way that I taught in class may be the way that I think most of the students are going to get it, but that doesn't mean that that's going to work for you, right? So if you come to me with a question, I may explain it to you in reverse, and you're going to be like, oh, that's what you were trying to say in class? There is always another way to convey that idea. And I'm going to really hammer that point home for the for loops that we're about to get into next. I was going through it and rewatching the video from last night, and I'm like, shit, I wouldn't get this if I was taught it that way. So what did I do? I went through, came up with an entirely different visual way of going through it, And because of that, I am more confident that you guys are gonna maybe get the for loops a little bit more tonight. Okay, any final questions?
So I was trying to schedule the like one-on-one with you.
Mhm.
I only need like 5 minutes. I have an idea, but I want to discuss it alone.
Sure.
So can we do after class, or should I just schedule it one?
Schedule one only because I'm as tired as you guys are usually after
Okay.
class. So I can make exceptions for that if the only time you can meet is after class, but you're probably going to have a much better meeting if you schedule it. The only thing that I will say is I haven't blocked out office hours for tomorrow yet. I don't know if my calendar goes that late on Friday. So
Yeah, it doesn't go that far because I leave work at 4:30. So the only thing I can do, I don't see. And last thing I see on Friday is 4:30, but I leave at 4:30.
I think I just opened a 5 p.m. slot. And if not, shoot me a Slack message and I can book you in at 5 if that's the time that you want.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll send you a message for tomorrow at 5 if that works for you. It works for me.
Yep. And I should have Saturday and Sunday appointments available as well. So
Actually, aren't we going tomorrow to the Open Hack tomorrow?
yes.
So is it gonna be fine still at 5?
Oh, I'm sorry. You said tomorrow. I was thinking Friday. Yeah, I can do tomorrow at 5 because Open Hack doesn't start until 6.
All right, perfect. All right, I'll message you on Slack.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just take some notes here. Okay. Any other questions about capstones? Thank you for all the messages of support, guys, in the chat. And yes, I do have teacher voice. I can turn that off. Usually, sometimes. Okay. We are going to head into our loop review. Slideshow, turn this on. Okay. This is everything that we covered last night, but in a more visual format. Please, for the love of God, raise your hand or come off mute and scream bloody murder if I lose you at any step here. And this is also linked in the daily outline if you want to go through these slides on your own. Okay, this is from the I Love Coding cheat sheet. That is like the 15-page, 10-page PDF that kind of breaks down all of the syntax. If you are wrestling with JavaScript syntax, if you're like, when do we use a double equal or a single equal or a triple equal? This cheat sheet is your go-to resource. This is probably my favorite resource out of all of the resources for having something in your back pocket and having one quick thing that you can go to without having to Google a bunch of different things. I really like this cheat sheet because I'm just going to drop the link to the slides in there, and then the slides have that cheat sheet linked in it. Jen, save that question. I'm going to come back to you once I get into the playground for that. Okay, so the reason that I like this cheat sheet is it goes through step by step and breaks down the different parts, right? Because when we first see a for loop, we're like, what's going on here? But by understanding the steps that the computer is going to run the code, it makes it easier for us to understand the code. So I'm going to shut up for a second and let you guys read this, and then I'm going to move on to my visual explanation of a for loop.
Boy, I think I just missed something because I just went outside real quick to use bathroom.
We're just going over the cheat sheet.
Okay.
Okay, so basically the computer is saying, hey, start at, actually, I'm just going to move on to my slides. If this makes sense to you, great. If it doesn't, here's how I think about the for loop broken down into quite literally 25 different slides to understand it. So we start with this for loop, and we're looking at this and you scream and run off and start crying because there's a lot of different syntax going on there. But we need to break it down into 4 parts. We start with the for. The for is a special word in JavaScript that knows we are going to start a loop. Then we get into the 4 parts. The first part is saying, what should we start our loop at? What are we counting at? So we start this particular loop at 1. And we say let because 1 that we're keeping track of is a new variable called I. I is used all throughout this loop, but I is just keeping track of how many times should this loop run. Then we move on to the second part after that semicolon, which is when should our loop keep running? If whatever is in that orange part is true, our loop will keep running. If it is not true, it will stop the loop. Then we move into what should we do between loop runs? In this case, and for many loops, we're going to say, well, we just finished another loop run, add 1 to I, so we're able to keep track of how many times the loop has run. There are times that we would adjust this number if we didn't want the loop to run over every single item in an array. But for the most part, we usually add 1 to I. And then finally, the 4th part, when our loop is running, what should it be looping over? Whatever code is between this curly brace and this closing curly brace is what will run every time our loop runs. Okay, so what does that look like? In order to understand it, we have to trace our code. Tracing our code is basically pulling apart step by step what the computer is doing. So as a human, we can explain what the computer is doing when we actually tell it to do that code. So we start with the for. Which means we got a loop coming. Now we break it down. This is, again, how the computer is reading your code and understanding it. So we start with let I equals 1. Now in memory, I is stored in memory with the value of 1. That is just where every for loop starts. Take that first condition, store a number in memory. Now we go to the second part and we say, is I, which is the number 1, is 1 less than or equal, or is 1 less than 3? Yes, it is. So we ignore the rest of this for now and come down to that console log. What is console log doing? It's logging out I. Well, wait a second. I is equal to 1. We know that from the memory. So we output the number 1. Then we come down and we hit this closing curly brace, and it goes, all right, I'm done with this iteration of the loop. So the computer comes up to this I++. What's that plus plus doing? It's just adding 1 to I. So now you'll notice in the computer memory, I is now equal to 2. So we move on to the next step, which is checking to see is 2 less than 3? Yes, it is. So we come down and we run this loop again. Now we console log out I is now no longer 1. I is now 2. So we output 2. We hit the end of the loop. That's the second time our loop has run. And so we come up, we increase I is now 3. Natasha, plus plus is shorthand to add one. If you wanted to add more than one, you could do I plus equals and then however more you wanted to add. Now, I is equal to 3. Is 3 less than 3? No, 3 is less than or equal to 3, but 3 is not less than 3. So we're done running the loop and we move on to any code that is after the curly brace. That means that if this loop runs, the output of the loop will be 1, 2. Brandy, did you have a question you wanted to share?
In the same words that I just said to Taylor, none of that meant anything to me.
Okay. I'm guessing you know what a loop is.
Kind of.
Okay, then let's take a step back. Maybe I shouldn't have been that presumptive. The point of a loop is just so that we can run a section of code multiple times without having to put that time and time again. So if I wanted to log out the numbers 1 through 50 for some reason, it would be crazy for me to write console log 1, console log 2, console log 3, right? There should be some way to get the computer to say, hey, I want to do this 50 times. That's why
Okay.
we use a loop.
That
The-
kind of makes sense to me.
Okay.
But
Max, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Do you discuss what the user or what the database is receiving while this is happening? What code, what is the code doing in plain English? Does that make sense?
I think what I need for it to make sense is to eventually, when we do it in practice, in reference to an actual project, because now it feels like a lot of abstract ideas that don't have any relevance to each other. Like console log right now doesn't mean much to me. Logging things out, I don't really understand what that means.
Okay. Good news is I think I'm going to get you back in the second half of class because I've got concepts for you that are more hands-on and that will make more sense.
Okay.
So what was so hard about last night, right? Because I think, or I'm hoping at least I got 1 or 2 of you back going through this and saying, all right, I see what the computer's doing. Why do I get it now and do I not get it last night? One reason may be that you don't have this in context, right? You're not using real data on this. So you get what a for loop is supposed to do. You just don't get why you would use one. That's okay. The other reason I may have lost you is because we used arrays last night. We didn't just say, hey, we want a loop to run to print out 1 and 2. What we did last night is we looped over an entire array. I not only represents how many times the loop can be running, but it can also represent an index as we're going over an array. So we talk about 0, 1, 2 of accessing different items in the array. This is an we can use I to access different pieces of the array as we're going. So let's revisit this. We have our animals and we've got a dog, a cat, and a snake. Okay, well, we know we start I at 0 here. Then we are saying keep on running this loop while I is less than the total number of items in the array. This is 0, 1, 2, right? 3 items total. And we want to go through every item in the array. We I plus plus. So my goal here is to print out not only the index of the item in the array. In other words, dog is 0 because we start at 0, cat is 1, and snake is 2. So if I have this array of items and I just want to see all of them printed out, I can write this for loop, and what it's going to do, actually, this is a mistake in the slide. This should say 3, my bad. is going to go through and it's going to look at index 0. I is starting at 0. So we go animals 0. What is the 0 index of animals? It is dog. So how do we take dog and print it out? We say animals at index 0, which is where our I started, and we log out 0, which is I, and the 0 index of animals, which is dog. Now we add 1 onto our I. I now equals 1. So we log out I, which is 1, and then we go back into the array and we get whatever is at the index 1. We then take that and log out cat. Yes, Jen, if you wanted to loop over an entire array, this will always work. And because we are using the dot length property, if we added 5,000 other animals to this array and reran our code, we wouldn't have to touch a single line in this for loop. It would log out all 5,000 items because this loop is designed to run over every single item in that.
So, so you know how is it for let I? Can I be anything?
Yeah, you can call I anything as long as you are consistent in using it in
Whole
all
loop,
3
right?
parts and in the block of the code. Yes.
So can I be another variable that we created before to like put it together? Or like, let's say we have like forest, there's 3 animals in forest, right? Can we put that in forest? 3 animals together or no? I don't know if that makes sense.
Try asking that again.
So let's say there's another variable that we made like animals right here, like
Mhm.
dog, cat, snake, and we make another what do you call it,
An array.
variable with another 3 of them, and
Mhm.
separate them into category.
Mhm.
I don't know if that would work if we use the other variable as a I was just thinking, I don't know if we can use a different variables to put that together.
Are you asking if we could like use another array as like the I variable?
Yeah, but like a variable array.
So you could use this for loop to loop over any array that you created. You could name this I something different, but the point of the I is to keep, so the computer is keeping track of how many times this loop has run.
So what if we want a comparison like another array to this array?
Those, I think what he's asking is like you will use different properties. So like there's different stuff that you will use in coding for comparing like 2 separate arrays. But for like this question specific, I don't think you can put like, and I don't think you would be able to use something that you created an array with values in it as the I indicator in a different, like you wouldn't be able to put, so like let's say you created the array called forest. So you wouldn't be able to put let forest equal 0, I is greater than forest, like that other array.
Right. You want to think about this as what are these 3 things telling the for loop to do? This is telling it where we start at. This is telling it if the for loop should keep running. And this is telling it what to do after every iteration of the for loop.
So is the I just a common placeholder?
So the I is a common placeholder for incrementer or index.
Yeah, you
Yes.
just have to use that consistently through the for loop.
Yeah. So if you wanted to do this as
Can we use X, please?
yeah, you can definitely use X.
Yeah, the X will be better. That if that's like, I don't
So
know.
you'll get funny looks if you write X in an interview. It will totally work, but I is the common one because it's short for incrementer or index. But I will show you If we paste this in, ignore the stupid quote issue. And we pop this open in our terminal and run it, we get our dog, cat, snake. Well, if we wanted to say loop runs, and while loop runs was less than animals dot length, loop runs plus plus, log out loop runs animals loop runs and run that, that would do the exact same thing. We could also change this and say, forest is tree, grass, sun. And if we changed forest here and here, then we would get tree, grass, sun. And if we even added something to this and reran it, now we get that one logging out as well.
Yeah, but you can't like use forest as loop runs, right?
No,
Okay.
loop runs has to be a number.
That's what I mean. There you go. That's what I mean it to say. Like what it has to be, like a comparison. You know, if you want to compare something to a different different loop. You know, like so it doesn't repeat itself in a code or something. So now it makes sense a little bit better.
Yeah, it's just like using X in math.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like they
Yes,
use
the
common
X
text placeholder.
I just got that now.
You
You could adjust this. So if for whatever reason you didn't want tree and grass and wanted sun and shade, let's say you wanted to start this loop halfway through it, you don't technically have to start this at 0. You could start this at 2, and then you would get sun and shade and not loop over tree and grass.
Thank you and Ariel so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
thank
wait.
you.
So it's just
Yeah.
where to start in the index, how
Yep.
long to run the index,
Yep.
and then what to increment by.
Yep.
Okay, wow. Great.
That's way better than yesterday. I got
Thank
it.
you so much. Oh my goodness. Thank you guys. Thank
Code
you.
Academy helped a lot to understand that too.
Where should our loop start? When is our loop keeping on running? What do we increment by every time the loop runs? And then what's actually happening inside of our loop? Which, if you want to say that is, what index do we start at? How long do we keep going? And how do we increment? That's also totally fine. Last call for questions on our for loop. Now you may say, why does it have to be this fucking complicated? And why do we need all 4 steps on this? Why is there not just an easier way to loop over every item in the array and get access to it? And if you do say that, well, that's okay. That's what a for of loop does, right? This for of loop is taking every individual item in our array and dropping it into our type down here. Motherfrecker. It's a typo on this as well. Sorry.
Max, while you're doing that, just quick.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can show an example with like if a person inputs this year of birth, calculate this number this many times to equal this number to make the statement, are they over 21 true?
Sure.
Something like that's called a Boolean or a Boolean?
Boolean.
Boolean. Thank you.
Great question. So I'm just going to comment this out. And I'm going to say that we've got an array of years. And the years are Oh, I meant to say 19, but I guess 1865, you would have every reason to drink. So we've got the years. And what we want to know is, are these people over 21 to buy liquor or drink or smoke or whatever? So we're going to say for, and I'm going to do this of our loop, for the birth year of all the years. That means that if we just console log this out, Brandy, to your point, why do we console log? So that when we're writing the code, we can test smaller snippets of it without having to test all of it all at once. So at this point, I want to know, hey, did I write my loop right? Am I seeing each one of these years come out? Because if I didn't do that right, I may be getting the whole array instead of dealing with each individual year, which is the point of the for loop. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say, go run that, go log out each one of this. So I'm getting all of those years logging out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, we need to calculate the age of the person. So I'm going to say the age of the person is 2023 minus whatever their birth year is. Now I want to test that. So I'm going to take out birth year from my console log and put age in. Now I run that, and now I've calculated all of these people's ages. Okay, but we've got one more step. We want to know if they are old enough to drink. So what we're going to do is we are going to delete our console log, and we're going to say if their age is greater than or equal to 21, console.log birth year and the birth year that's coming from our loop. And then we're going to say is allowed to drink because they are age. Else, we take this whole thing, paste it, and say is not allowed to drink because they are a certain age. So we did our if statement here based off of the calculation that is coming from the birth year, that is coming from us looping over all of the years in this array. Then we said if they are greater than or equal to 21, we are going to log out this text, which is Jen, why we put this in quotes, because we're just saying ignore whatever we typed in here. This is just output that the user is going to see. Compared to when we put birth year in here, we did not put this in quotes because we wanted the computer to evaluate that. We wanted the computer to see that that was X. We wanted to see that it was a variable. Compared to everything down here, we're just telling the computer blurt that out. But down here, we didn't put age in quotes because we want it to pull whatever the calculation is from up here. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to run it. And now I'm going to see my output. And I'm going to see 2019 is not allowed to drink because they are 4, but all of these other years are. And I can test that by modifying something and adding in another date in here. And now I'll see, oh, went in the wrong direction. Now I'll see not allowed to drink. Did that example help someone other than Rain?
Natasha said it was a good example.
Definitely push me on this. If there's a concept that you're not getting and you're like, I'm feeling like I would get this if I could see this, put me on the spot. I am totally up for going through examples like this. In fact, I have examples like this lined up for after we go over our last concept, which is functions. Last call for questions on this before we keep going. I will also move this. I'm going to do it right now before I forget. I'm going to move this file into the My Code folder so it will get uploaded to GitHub at the end of class. So if you want to reference it, you can. Come on, Finder, you can move it. That was weird. Okay. I'm going to call this age and loops.
Hey, Max, do you think you can do the forest one as well? But also, could you spell forest right, because it's bothering me?
Just with a 4 of?
The entire thing, you had multiple comments that really helped. So I actually wrote it down in the notes tonight, but if you have it saved into their files or into the file, that would be good.
Oh yeah, it's called age and loops, and that's the forest example in there as well.
Okay, yeah, fix
Line
the 4 one
4
as
too,
well.
Max.
Oh, thank you.
You have it spelled like my kid and not the actual trees.
Oh, you're the reason I can't spell things right.
That wasn't on me, just so we're clear.
It's spelled like Forrest Gump.
That was my first thought too.
Yeah.
Okay, last call for questions. I will get this uploaded. Actually, I can upload it right now, just so you guys know where you can get to it. Okay, so in Canvas. Come on, Canvas. There we go. Down here in the C5 My Code GitHub, if you click into that, that will take you into our file structures that I've been working on every day. And if you pop open week 5, head into day 3, you'll see that age and loops is in here. The other file that we'll be working on later tonight will also be in here. So if you click into that, that will show you all of the code that we were just working on. And I had thought I had uncommented that. Oh, maybe I didn't save it in the right spot. Okay, let me open up that and I will get that fixed. Sorry. My code 5, day 3, open. Agent loops, uncomment this, save. This is all Git, which you guys will be learning soon. And that is now live on GitHub.
So if, for example, right here on your screen, so if we don't put else, will the code still run?
Yes, it would only log out, though, people who are allowed to drink.
Okay, but else is not necessary. So do we have to put the colons after the curly parentheses, whatever it's called? Right after the else, you see the else right here?
Yeah.
Because the curly parenthesis before that, doesn't it end there? So do we have to put a column, like the semicolon, whatever?
You don't need a semicolon at the end of a curly brace.
All right, so that would work. Okay, I don't know why mine is not working, but it's all right. I'll figure it out.
Hit me up during, oh, it is break time. Go on break. See you guys at 7:25. And Goggin, if you want to share your screen, I can take a look at it.
I just cleared the whole thing. I'm
okay.
I'm just gonna do it again.
Go on break. See you at 7:25.
All right.
No quiz this week. Instead, you've got a 10 challenge assignment, and some of them you will be able to do in 15 seconds or less. So we will get to that in 1 second. There's one final concept that we need to touch on in computer science, right? In JavaScript, they call them functions. And functions are a way that we can have a group of code run over and over for us without us having to write it out multiple times. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to So we're going to write a function that converts Fahrenheit to Celsius. And in case you didn't know, the formula to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius is take the Celsius temperature, multiply it by 1.8 and add 32. Okay, so how would we write that, right? We can say const, and let's say our Celsius temp is equal to 20 degrees. And we come in here and we say, okay, we need to now multiply that. So I'm going to say const num, let's say result 1 equals our Celsius temp times, and then you can either do 1.8 or by 9/5, either one. So I'm going to say 9 divided by 5 here, just to make it. Okay. Then we need to take that and say final result equals our result 1 plus 32. And then finally, we can console log out our final result. So I come in here, I pops open my terminal, I do my node temp converter, and I get 20 degrees Celsius is equal to 68 degrees. Okay, well, what happens if I have 40 different temperatures that I want to convert? Well, now all of a sudden, this seems very repetitive to have to copy these 4 lines over and over and over again to make it that conversion work, right? So what I can do is I can make a function. And that function we are going to call C to F. Now that C to F needs some information in order for it to do the conversion. What does our formula need as input in order to be able to do that? It needs to know the Celsius temperature. Okay, and what is our function going to do? It is going to take all of this work and it's going to console log out our final result for us. Well, what does that mean? That means that down here, once I have declared my function, I can use this function multiple times to say convert 20 degrees, then convert, I don't know, what's 100 Celsius and what is 0 Celsius. Now, by moving this code into the function, notice these curly braces are similar to our for loops so far, right? It is basically saying, hey, any code between these two are going to run whenever C to F is called with a number. So if I save this and run it, we're going to get 68, 212, and 32 back. Let's see this another way. This function, by the way, can be written 2 ways. By using the word function, this is the older way. Instead, we use this type 2, which is now more common, this arrow function. So it's kind of like const and let. It is better to use this arrow function method to write a new function as opposed to this way, which would still work. So what we do here is we tell it, hey, in order for this add function to work, it needs 2 pieces of information. We call these parameters. Num1 and num2 are both parameters that are coming into that function in order to work. So what happens is add that we call down here. Yes, Natasha, you can name the function whatever you'd like. Can't start with a number, but other than that, you can name it whatever you want. And it can't have a space in it, just like a JavaScript variable. So we're calling add, and add comes up here and it goes, all right, I know how to add things together. That's a function that we have defined to the computer. Now it takes 5 and it sends it into wherever num1 is, and it takes the 2 and it sends that into wherever num2 is. From there, that 5 and 2 trickle down to these num1s and these num2s. So 5 and 2 show up there. 5 and 2 get added together, add up to 7. we take that 7 and we return it to wherever this add function was called, which is down here. So what ends up happening is this console log becomes that 7, and ultimately that's what gets logged out. So we will be diving into functions a little bit more, especially when we're building user interactivity and we're saying, hey, we want this chunk of code to run whenever we want when a user clicks on this thing, this is the function that we want to happen. These are the lines of code that we want to run. So that is functions. Any questions on that?
I have,
Yeah.
So, and if I'm off, let me know.
Mhm.
So when you go to, like, for example, the casino and you play Super Bowl Keno, that's just a whole bunch of computed probability codes
Mhm.
that they're playing against me.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
This might
And they
be
would be writing groups of functions in order to say, hey, we need to calculate the computer's chances of winning or the dealer's chances of winning or whatever. Okay, now we need to calculate the user's chances of winning. Okay, well, if we need to calculate that based off of how many cards are left in the deck. So that may be another function or something like that. All right, I've got
Sorry,
one-
can you repeat the first one?
what do you mean the first one?
First function.
This one?
First one, because I only like resumed when it was the second one.
Yeah, so this one, what we did is we said, hey, we're going to make a new function name called C to F. Then we need to take in some information to make this work. Then we go through and we do whatever lines of code we need and get that result and either return the result or log out the result. And then because we have defined this function as a block of code, we're able to call that function multiple times down here.
Is there a way to call it without doing those multiple lines of code, Max? Like putting like either doing strings and they do all the numbers at once, or do you have to list them?
You could
in those
combine
separate
this with a
lines?
loop if you wanted to. So you could say const temps equals 2100 0. And then for const temp of temps, C to F, the temp, and that would achieve the exact same thing. Camel case is the name of the casing, Natasha, that you're looking for.
I know
Wouldn't
this might be getting a little ahead, or it might be a stupid question, but are all these different languages going to be able to be used at once in one code? Like, can you use HTML and CSS along with JavaScript in one code to do different things on a website?
Yes, and they all have different purposes, right? So the HTML is structure your content, CSS is to style your content. We've seen that so far. But how would you tell HTML, hey, a user typed in 2 things, add those 2 numbers together? We couldn't really do that in our HTML. We can't really do that in our CSS, but we can do that in our JavaScript. But
Okay,
in
so
our
all
JavaScript,
these, sorry, go ahead.
in our JavaScript, when we get that sum, we need some way to be able to show it, right? And we're not just going to put it in the console. So JavaScript and the HTML can work together to not only get the input from the HTML, but to take that output from the JavaScript and put it back into the HTML. And that's what we're going to be diving into project-wise starting on week 7.
Okay, I kept thinking different languages. So are you going to be able to blend them, or are you going to be able to mesh them up together? And that just answered it perfectly because they all just do different things.
Correct. And then we're going to get into React, where there's very clearly a line between HTML and CSS right now. There's very clearly a line between our JavaScript and our HTML. What React does is it blurs those lines for us. That makes it easier for us to write our HTML directly inside our JavaScript. And that's what we're working our way up to. But there are these core computer science fundamentals like loops and functions and all of that stuff that we need to understand first.
Okay.
Rain, what's up?
So I have a twofer.
Yeah.
Very quick. So just to make sure I have an understanding, if I'm thinking of a car, HTML is the frame of the car. Is it a car, sedan or is it an SUV? CSS is the color and the styling of the car. And JavaScript is all the good stuff inside that actually makes it function.
Yep.
Awesome sauce. Okay,
So
so
you may put an accelerator in the car in the HTML. You may make that accelerator have a black border around it because it's rubber in the CSS. But when you actually step on that accelerator, you need your JavaScript to link into your HTML to tell it what to do in the engine to make the car go.
okay. All right. And I had a twofer.
Mhm.
The second part was, could you do an example to where, like, because I know you're going to make us do examples, and I want to do something like, let's say gardening. Like if I had an app and I input this date or time of year and this temperature, it tells me like what type of plants in the list I can plant. Is that too long of an example?
I can do that.
There's a
Let me
couple
go
more
through
steps than what we've
one
got.
final example for you, which is kind of in the similar vein that I already have planned out. And then if you want me to do that, I can do that once I get everyone kicked off on homework, and then whoever wants to work on the homework can start there. And then if you want to listen into the example, I can do that. Sound good?
Yeah, I would rather do your example, and then maybe I can do it myself from there.
Sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Max.
Yeah.
Real quick. Rain, if you want to type that in C5 as a light bulb moment, because a lot of people resonated with that, and I know a couple of students had a question, when you get a chance about your analogy, that would be probably really helpful to everybody else too, just to remember later.
Oh, okay, I'll remember it. Thank you. I didn't even look at the chat yet.
Okay. Okay, so Palash, that code probably actually is working. It's just not outputting anywhere. So if you put your add function and wrap a console.log around it, it will probably do exactly what you want. So it is working, you just can't see the output of it. Okay, so the last example that I have here, and now we're kind of starting to see these ideas mesh together, right? We're seeing data structures, we're seeing loops, we're seeing conditional statements. They're all kind of starting to come together. So this is data, this is an array, and inside this array, and we know it's an array because of the square braces, and we know that there are objects inside of that array because there are curly braces. We have some accounts. Some of them are savings accounts, some of them are checking accounts, all of them have IDs, and the accounts have some balances. So what if I would like the total balance of all the checking accounts? So let's try that. First, I need to keep track of the sum of all of those accounts. I can't just say add two numbers together. I need to start sum out at 0 so the computer knows where to save this information as we're going through them. Now I have accounts in here and I could reference each one of these individually, but what happens if someone opens a new account? So what I want to do is a loop, and I want to get the account of all of the accounts. And in order to test if that's working, I can console.log, let's say the account.type. So if I do my node banking.js, I can see what comes out: checking, savings, savings, checking. Okay, why is that happening? Because we are taking all of the accounts and dumping that into our for loop. That means that each one of these accounts, each one of these objects is going to get dumped in to this account right here. That means when we say account.type, we are referencing each one of these types here, which is getting us the value of the accounts. With that said, what we could do is say, hey, go take the sum and make the sum equal to whatever the sum currently is plus the account balance. And when we're done, console log out the sum. So if we if we run that code, we get 850 because 100 plus 50 plus 350 plus 350 is 850. Now we can take that a step further. We only wanted the balance of the checking accounts. So what we can do is say if the account, which again is referencing this object up here, dot type is equal to the word checking, then add that account balance to the sum. But if it isn't equal to checking, we don't have an else. So we just ignore it. So what our loop is doing is it's looking at this account first. It's checking to see if the type is equal to checking. The type is equal to checking. So we take that account's balance, we add it to sum. Sum is now equal to 100. We come down here, we hit this last curly brace, and we go, hold on. Let's go back up to our accounts. There's another account we need to check here. Okay, so account is now equal to this object right here. If the account type is equal to checking, it's not. It's equal to savings. So we hit the bottom. We ignore whatever is in here because this if statement is not true. We come down to here. We say, okay, go get this account. Check if this account is equal to checking. It's not. Okay, now we get this final one. We take that balance, 350, and we add it to whatever our sum was, which is 100 from the first account. Then we come down here, say we have looped through all of the accounts, and we can now get our sum. So if we run this, we get 450 because 350 plus 100 is 450. Brandy, is this starting to click a little bit more with the real world examples? Or are we at a different level of misunderstanding?
Kind of. Like I understand the idea of what that does. Kind of. On like a general level, but the like specific bits, certain things like let, some, whatever, what all of it does specifically to like what each bit does to contribute to the whole thing somehow does not, it isn't clicking.
Does this help? Or does this just confuse you? So like this in particular.
Oh, that. Kind of, yes.
Okay, one more for you before I let you off the hook. These are all linked, by the way, in the week 7 pre-reading. That is the reference sheet, which I will, oh, thank you for beating me to it. There's a specific PDF for that as well. And then the other one is, this one isn't quite as in there, but like this one's showing you, Jen, to your point about strings and like, why do we need to put this in quotes? Because the computer knows what the let word means. It means that it's starting a new variable. Then it knows that whatever word comes after that let command is going to be the name of the variable. then it knows that the equal sign is going to say, take whatever's on the right side of the equal and store it into the left side of the equal. Then the quotes are saying, hey, there's some text that we're trying to store in here. And whenever we hit the closing quote, then it knows to store it in that value. And then finally, the semicolon just saying it's at the end of the line. And then the same here for like the arithmetic operators. And there's one for variables down here. And there's one for comparison somewhere.
There's my light bulb.
On what?
On the quotation marks, because like you were putting them everywhere, like in the little examples of like trees, oak, this, and this were all in quotation marks. And I'm like, well, why are you putting them here and here and here? You're literally just taking that group of text and making it
You're telling the computer
value
all
of
those
something
letters go
else.
together. Yeah.
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 I was like, I couldn't catch up to that.
Yeah, and we use strings not only to store them in variables, but also to output them in console logs, and also to separate out items in arrays, and to, right, we use strings in a lot of different places. It's not always necessarily just that string when we put it in its own variable, but when we use a string in an array, or we use a string to output some text, or we use a string to whatever, whenever we see those quotes, that is its own string of text or string of characters together.
It's starting to make a little more sense, but like, you will probably very, very soon see a one-on-one scheduled.
Try
very
and
soon.
come in. I think the thing that you may be struggling with the most is you don't know what questions to ask. And I think that that's why you're like,
Yes.
I kind of get it. Like, I can read that. I can tell you why it's doing that, but I don't know how, what I'm not getting, other than I'm not getting it yet.
Right. Because like I
and-
look at what's on the screen and I can like, oh, okay, I get that it, it's checking the balance of certain accounts. Okay, cool. And I get why you would need to do that and how, like, I can kind of see how it works, like what it's doing. But as far as how specifically each like piece feeds into it is, I think, what's getting me. I don't know.
So break it down. Maybe someone who like will benefit from printing out the code and like literally writing next to it. The other thing that you can do is break it down literally in line. And so we'll be doing this more and more, especially as our code gets more complicated. Just put comments in here, right? And a lot of people get to the end of class, and the way that they make sure all of this is sinking in is they put the English like sentence of what we're telling the computer to do here. So we can say like making a new array because of the square brackets. Then we can say, all right, what are we doing down here on the line after this? We're making a new object with keys of ID, type, and balance, and values that come after the colon. Right? And then you can even say, well, why do we need an array? Maybe you add a note in there saying we need an array because we are storing multiple values. It's like a list of accounts. Right?
Okay.
Those
That is a little hard. I've noticed, I was actually referencing this earlier in a one-on-one with Jason. The comments, being able to make comments in the code, I've found is actually super helpful for me. So I think that might be something I need to do.
And I will go through code and try and add these in, as we finish it. We're working on so many projects. I can't promise that all of them will be commented out, but saying, little things like loop through each of the accounts in the accounts array so we can get access to each one individually. And then something like here, check the account from the loop type, which is a key from the object to see if it equals checking. And I know there was a question in the chat that I think got already answered accurately, but we use one equal for assignment, where we say take whatever's on the right side of this and store it in whatever's on the left side of it. We use triple equals when we're comparing, it's called a comparison operator, is the thing on the left equal to the thing on the right. The computer can't really tell apart one when we're saying, hey, take this value and make it now equal this new thing, compared to, hey, does this value equal this value? Are these two values the same? So we use triple equals to say, are these two values the same? We use one equal when we say, hey, take whatever this new value is and overwrite that into the variable.
Max, I was also thinking as you were explaining that it might help, Brandy, if you think of how you would go about making a list like this if you had to. Like back in the day, I guess they wrote it on index cards or something. So you'd have to get the card and check it and then make a list. I think it might give you like just your own words to describe what's happening in the code, if that makes sense or is helpful. I don't know.
One of the
Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
One of the top students in cohort 2, who was very clearly getting it, every night spent an hour deleting out all of my comments and putting in all of her own comments. And I would read her comments and go, well, those comments make way more sense than my comments, but that's what it took, right? That's where she said, I can code along with you in class. And she knew that she had to code along with me in class for her to get it. But that wasn't the light bulb. The light bulb was her going through and saying, can I explain this in my own words? And that's where she would come to one-on-ones and be like, I can't explain this line. I get that what the whole computer is supposed to be doing, but this is the line that I don't understand. And that is more than enough to come into a one-on-one and have those questions. Sometimes it's not even, we need a question, we need some topic to get started on, but coming in and being like, I don't get line 15, please tell me what the fuck line 15 is doing, that's enough for a one-on-one. Okay, so I am going to save these into the repository. All of the code that we have written tonight and over the past 2 weeks is now in our GitHub. So I am going to share a link to that because you guys are going to need to reference the code that we used the past 3 days in order to be able to help you with your assignment. So your assignment is already uploaded in Canvas. It is due on Sunday, but you could get it done in the next 35 minutes, and I would highly encourage you to do so. So if you head to Canvas and take a look, always use that group by type option in the top right, right here, show by type, and then head down to the RP in-class project JS practice. Pop that open, and your assignment is to open this link in GitHub. You are then going to take this and hit the little copy button in the top right. Once you hit that copy, you are going to go into Finder, go create your week 5 day 3 folder, open that in VS Code. You are going to make a new file called JS Challenge. And you are going to paste in this whole file. In other words, make a new file, copy the link from Canvas, paste it in, and then there are 10 steps for you to do in here. So the first one is create a variable that's mutable. So you may have to Google what mutable means, but the answer or something to reference is already in that last link that I posted in chat. I'm going to stick around. I would encourage you guys to do this on your own. This is one of the assignments that it's going to be better for your level of understanding if you don't work on it in a group. With that said, I am around for the next 33 minutes to answer any questions you may have as this pops up. Amberlynn, what's up?
I think I'm doing something wrong when I go to do my terminal because
Okay.
I'm getting errors, I guess.
Share screen.
And I'll bring it over.
Thank you.
I'm probably not putting in the right node temp converter. Like that's what I think I'm doing wrong, but I know that was the first
Unexpected
one I did,
token
but
online.
same thing happened last night too after class.
I have no idea what you're it's yelling at you about a semicolon online. Oh, you know what the problem probably is? No. Let me scroll down to the bottom. Okay, here's the problem. One, always make sure you're scroll down to the bottom of the terminal because this is an old error that you already fixed. And the error that's
Okay.
causing the issue is actually down here at the bottom. So whenever you're in these like arrows, it's expecting like an ongoing command from you and you want to like back out of that. So to back out of it, you hit Control, not Command, and C, and that exits you out. So you're kind of back at this terminal line, which is saying I'm ready for a new command.
Okay.
Now we're going to try your node temp converter again. And when we run that, nothing happens. That is because all we need to do is console.log our final result up here. And now we get all of our temperatures out.
Okay.
So if you're stuck in the terminal and it's like not doing it, it's like we know this is what we are looking for enter a new command. And if you're ever in an unfamiliar spot and you're like, get me out of here, you can either close the terminal completely and reopen it or Control C, and that should bring you out to a new line.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And that is an important note. When you are working on this homework, it's not enough just to type it in here. You may want to make sure that it's working. So to run your code, you're going to come down here and do node and then whatever the name of the file is that you created. Keep in mind, you'll only see output in the terminal if you're console logging things out here. So these first two things up here, you aren't going to see any output in the terminal. But for number 3, it says output a concatenation of strings. Where do we output? That's going to be our console, right? So we're going to use a console.log to pull off number 3. So not all of these will output something to the terminal unless you put a console.log in. Did anyone need help just getting this in a file? Okay. If anyone has questions, any point of any of this, raise your hand. I'm around.
Max, I don't need help creating the file. Just what did you want the file from the information, the files from GitHub to be called?
You can call it anything that you want as long as you call it that in your node terminal. I called mine JS challenge.js. You can just call it challenge.js, homework.js, whatever, doesn't matter.
Oh, by the output, it means create a variable and then concatenate them. Like,
You could concatenate them directly in the console log. You don't necessarily have to concatenate in a new variable, but you totally could. Either one is fine.
okay.
Okay, so if you're sitting here and you're looking at create a variable that's mutable, and you're like, WTF is variable and WTF does mutable mean? Two resources for you to look at. One, head over to Canvas, take a look at the terms list, and in the terms list for week 5, there are things in here like variable. That definition may help you. If it doesn't, take a step back and go, all right, what day did we do variables on? That was week 5, day 1. So let me take a look at this script.js and see, hey, are any of the answers in here? Is any of this clicking for me about how we make a variable? And then what's the difference between mutable and immutable variables? They're two different variable types. Maybe that has something to do with it. So take a deep breath on these and say, hey, the answers to these are probably in one of the 3 days worth of code that we've done Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Reference some of that code, pull that into this assignment. And heads up, 8, 9, and 10 are very, very challenging. So you've been warned on, I'm sorry, 8 and 9 are very, very challenging. 7 starts to get hard, 8 is harder, 9 is the hardest, and then 10 shouldn't be too bad if you reference the code that we use. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you have no idea how to do 1 through 4 and you're lost on all 4 of them, go back through and reread the code from all 3 nights and then take a look back at the assignment.
I have a question.
Wow. I kept on calling on you and I was on mute the whole time.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, so if I wanted to do, so for the variable question, it can differentiate between an object and an array, right?
Mhm.
So if I wanted to do, so let's just say I had like if I wanted, so to use an array, like let's say my variable was books.
Mhm.
So like an array would be more so used for if I wanted to just name those books.
Mhm.
And then an object would be more so suited for, let's say, like if I had a library and I wanted to put books in a category, would I use an object for that?
Yeah, so a good example of like you could use an array of strings if you were just storing the book title. So
Okay.
let's say you wanted to store your books and it was, Lord of the Rings or whatever. And so you would say Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, you know. But if you wanted to store more than just the title, maybe you wanted to store the author and the published date in the category, then instead of an array of strings, you would do an array of objects because you wanted to store multiple properties, multiple keys about that book in particular.
Okay, and then another question I had was, so now would it be better, so like, okay, I see like the difference. So would it be better for like me to make just a bunch of arrays with like different book genres, or would it be better to do like a greater object library where I have smaller object, which would be like the genres, and then do like do it that way, if you get what I'm asking?
I do. It's a very good question, and it really depends on how you're kind of querying for the data. And the answer kind of depends based off of like, do you want the user to be able to say, hey, go show me all the fiction books? And that also, we're going to learn how to structure the data in a database as well, which is where we get to that point, right? Where like these data structures are important, but we also will get to the point where there's so much data that we need a better way of storing it long term. And that's when we're going to get into the database module and all of that stuff. So for the point of this assignment, I wouldn't go like too far down the rabbit hole of worrying about like if your data is structured well. But that is a very common like interview question is they'll give you a bunch of data and they'll be like, hey, go load this data up into variables. And you kind of have to think through, sometimes you have to ask questions and be like, well, is it more important that all of that information is grouped together? Or is it more important that you have a list of all the genres available and then you also have all of your book titles together? And the answer is you could store that in a bunch of little arrays, or you could store that in one big array with a bunch of little objects in them. And that approach is generally considered the better one, to have a one array with object, and each one of those objects has all the data that you're looking for. But it really does depend. There's no cut and dry answer for that. And I forget who mentioned it, But there are different ways of writing things, and we talked about like the code signatures. Data structure is one of those things, right? You may call it author, I may call it writer, right? And those are going to accomplish the same thing as long as we're consistent on, using that in all of those different items. Rain, I'm going to come to you in 1 second. Jen had a quick question. You're going to right click on the file, Jen, go down to open an integrated terminal, click down into the terminal. You're going to type in node space and then whatever you named the file that you pasted it in. So
Okay.
mine is called JS challenge. And then keep in mind that if I run this, nothing comes out. Well, that's because I don't have any console logs in here. So the second I put a console log in here, you'll see that output comes out.
I keep forgetting the node part because all I have to do is push the up button. I don't have to type it, so I don't remember what's in it.
Yes. Rain, what's up?
Okay, kind of like a vocab question, I
Yeah.
guess. So, if a mutable variable is a variable that can change their value or state, a constant would be, excuse me, referred to as a mutable variable. What
An
would-
immutable variable, yes.
Thank you. I was going to say, is it basically immutable, or is there another term I should say for that?
Immutable. Immutable and constant go together, let and mutable go together.
Thank you.
And mutable, just very fancy word for editable or changeable.
Thank you.
Okay, Max, I'm looking for like a visualization on Google of like an array versus an object. Do you think you could like make a picture? I don't think you're unmuted.
Okay. I love teaching virtually. It's just those little moments where it's like, come on, Max. I shared the wrong cheat sheet in the chat. I think someone else beat me to it and shared the right one. The cheat sheet that I shared does have an example of this, right? So if you go, this is the link that I shared at 7:45. If you go down to page 4, they're going to show you an object, which has all the key value pairs and the curly braces. And then they're going to show you an array, which is also showing you kind of how you list that out. Now, keep in mind, they are not mutually exclusive. You can use objects in arrays and you can use arrays in objects, but that should give you a better an idea of what both of them look like. Does that help? Cool. And the other cheat sheet has that as well. And I'm guessing, yeah, I like this cheat sheet more. Let me pop this open this way. The reason I like this cheat sheet is Ariel calls this the sports ball playbook, where I start drawing arrows on the screen.
When he starts making it into a wild diagram that you can't follow unless you watch video, it's sports ball.
I will say that Ariel dissed me last night about how I lose all the students, and I really appreciated one student in the feedback forum being like, the lines help me so much, and I was like, yes, it helped the student. Anyway, that's the reason I like this one, because it will show you the object and then they draw lines to it and saying like, these are the keys and then the values are over on the right side, compared to, oh, don't let me down. Do they not have arrays? Oh, I feel betrayed. I'm shocked that this cheat sheet doesn't have an array in it. Oh, okay. Well, at least they define objects well. They do have arrays up here as an example, if you wanted to compare the key value to the array. And then they also show you the different data types in that.
So for the create an object with that has at least two different data types.
Yep.
So what does that mean? Like a number and a string?
Yep. Or a Boolean or null or an array or an object within an object. Those are all different data types. So you could do a Boolean and a number, you could do a string and an array, you could do any combination of them.
Okay, so all right, I think I don't know. I did create this. Let's see if it works. Because I did like let car. Can I say it?
Mhm.
I did let cars equal object let cars make is Jaguar model XJS, year is 1985.
That meets the requirement, and you're good to go.
All right. What is it? Use this object for.
Shay, all of the resources are, if you head to Canvas and go to the modules, nope, go to the assignments, all of the assignments or all the resources are hiding under the module 7 pre-reading. And if you pop open the pre-reading, this visual learning I love coding cheat sheet is the one that I keep referencing, which is this one, or the text-based one that I just pulled up was I think this one. So just go through them, find whatever one that works for you. Yeah, sorry, it would make more assignments, more sense to put it in the modules, but it's under the assignments for the pre-reading. And I will make sure that that gets moved up next cohort, so it's labeled properly as week 5 instead of down as week 7.
All right, guys, I will have you look over some just to make sure I'm kind of on the right page.
Everyone get quick on their screenshot buttons if you're struggling and want to cheat.
So I just did the first 3.
Yep.
That and then the output, whatever that word is, incantation, whatever that Harry Potter as word is.
So you're not concatenating yet on line 9. In order to concatenate, you need to add 2 things together. Oh, I'm sorry. You're concatenating on 16. Yes, that's perfect.
Yeah, I took the example we did on day 1. I was like, I just get familiar, so I just
Yep. Yep, perfect. That's doing it. Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Cool. Thank you.
Good work.
Do we have to we have to use let and const, right? Like when declaring a variable for the first time?
Yep.
Okay. But after that, we don't need to use it anymore.
Correct.
And we can't.
Once you declare the variable, you don't need to reuse the let. The let and the const is just saying, hey, this is a new variable that I'm making up right now.
Okay, so like what if you made a variable at first that was like, so let's say we did let first var, first var, and then you did const first var. Like would the code let you do that or no?
No, it will throw an error and say, hey, this variable has already been declared.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Max? Oh, okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So if I'm on the number 7, so to target the teacher's name, I have to go through school.teachers.
School.elementary.teachers.
Okay. Teachers, and then it's gonna be equal max.
No triple equal. We only use the triple equal for comparison. So what we're looking for is the index of max, because teachers is an array.
Okay, now I'm lost. Okay, so it's gonna be if.
No if. just console.log.
Oh, sorry.
school.
Shit, what the hell I'm saying? So it's gonna be console.log. There's gonna be school dot elementary dot teachers.
And then how do we access an item in an array?
Is it gonna be man, I forgot. I just had it right now.
Square brackets and a number.
Square brackets. And okay, it's gonna be 1.
Yep. And
And
then
that's
and then you finally need the dot name, and that will do it.
okay, dot name, and that's it.
Yep.
Okay, all right. Damn, I just got lost there. A bit a minute.
That's why I have that onion emoji there, because it's peeling back the layers of the onion. And sometimes you may get to a section of the onion, and that part of the onion's gone bad, right? This isn't an object anymore. This is an array. And so instead of using dot notation, we got to switch out and use the bracket notation to use our indexes.
Max,
Yep. Palash, I'll come to you next. What's up, Rain?
just say yes or no if this is something a little beyond what we should be doing, but I'm trying to do restaurants, and I'm trying to do restaurants that are open at a certain time to equal like true or false. Am I doing?
Okay. You want to see that as an example?
I'm trying to do it on this homework, but I may be going over my head. Yes.
I think you're pushing yourself a little bit more than what the homework is asking you to do.
Okay, so I'll stop. I'll do something else. Thank you.
So what number are you on?
I am on number. 1 second. I'm doing 3 right now. Yeah, be honest with you.
Okay, so for 3, to use your example, we could say const name equals some restaurant. And then we can say opens
It
at,
might need to be what I need it to be, but go ahead. Excuse me.
and then we could do our console log name plus opens at and our opens at variable. And when we run that, we're going to get possibilities opens at 9 a.m.
This is awesome because I actually use possibilities as one of the lists. Let me screenshot this. Awesome. Thank you.
So that's all you need for this one. Now you could get a little bit fancier down here and try and use that in an array. So you could store possibilities, the number 9, and then true or false. And that would make number 4. That would meet the requirements of number 4.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Palash, what's up?
So I am on number 9, but I don't know if I'm making a syntax error or what. Should I send it over to you?
You can Slack it to me.
Okay.
9 is the hardest. And by the way, if you guys can't get 9, don't throw your computer through the window. It's fine to skip number 9. 9 is definitely a very tough challenge. And you may want to reference the checking account sum that we did tonight. That might make it a little easier. But number 9 is very, very challenging, and I don't expect you guys to be able to do that one. Someone else have a question?
Okay, I have a quick question. Does it matter if so I'm commenting on my code. Does it matter if I use like double brackets and move on to the next slide, or should I use multi-line comments if I'm gonna be commenting more than one line?
If you're doing more than one line, it's preferred to do the /*, but the computer doesn't really care, so it's up to you.
Max.
Yep.
So for each one of these restaurants, I would literally have to rewrite each part for each restaurant, but wasn't there a shorter way you taught us?
If you're putting it in an object, it's common to repeat the key multiple times.
Okay, especially with different hours. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, Max.
Yep.
So I'm stuck on the first one.
Okay.
Because I looked it up and it said, like the example I found was let mu x equals, whatever.
That's it. That's the answer.
Okay, so I tried that in mine though, and it keeps breaking my prettier. So I don't know if I'm right in prettiers being
Share your screen.
stupid
Let's take a
or-
look. Okay, so you're so close. You just accidentally have this MUT in here by accident.
Okay.
And now you've got two of them. So take this let out, because we only use let to make a new variable. When we're changing an existing one, we don't need that let again.
So that looks fine, but prettier says it's still angry.
Yes, two reasons. One, when we use a let, whatever comes after that let is the name of the variable, but it can't have a space in it. So that's why it could only be one. And then when we change the value of a variable, we don't use the let here, we just use the variable name. The whole point of the let is to say, hey, we're making a new variable.
Okay. You said delete.
No, you're good. You got 1 and 2
Oh.
done now.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, Max. So I have another question. So if I create a library and I make it immutable, how would I have to keep adding objects in order to like change data in there, or okay.
Yep. Or if you're doing it as an array, you would make the array a let, and then you could push items into it. Jen, what's up?
Stuck on 7. I know that I have to do like the console log where it's names and then the brackets 1.
Are you
I'm not-
doing school.elementary.teachers?
No.
That's your problem. So you can't just jump down to the name level. You got to peel the layers of the onion back to get down there. So it's going to be school dot, and then do you want to go to the middle teacher or the elementary? Okay, you
No.
go to the elementary, now where?
I'm not putting that in quotation marks.
If you're using dot notation, you don't need quotations. If you're using bracket notation, you do.
Now, how do I so I got the school.elementary.teachers. Now what do I do? Name and then max, or
So you're going to do, I'm going to give you the visualization that we want to hit. So we go school first,
Yep.
then elementary,
Mhm.
then teachers, but then we have to be careful because this teachers is not an object. it's an array. So we have to use the index here, which is index 1, and then we switch back to the name.
So I have to put an index 1 and then, I'm sorry, I'm not getting it.
You said the right answer. Yep. We're going to do our console.log school first,
Yeah,
and school's an object. So we keep going on the dot notation. Elementary object. Teachers is still inside the object, but now we say, hold on, this is an array. So we have to switch to our bracket 1 because we don't want Arial, who would. What we want is down here. And then now we're back to an object. So we do our dot name.
wait, how is, with just the 1 in the bracket dot name targeting, because it's 0, 1?
0, 1. So
Okay,
if
so
we
the
wanted
index
Karen's
is,
name, we would do 2 and we would get Karen instead
all right, so the brackets with a number in it is the index.
for the array. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So for the number 8, is it gonna be a log? But it says loop, right? So
It
is
is
it gonna be
both a loop and a log.
So is it gonna be a for loop? Oh,
Mhm.
sorry, a loop of whatever.
Yep. You can do a for of, or you could do a traditional index loop.
All right, I'll try.
See, that's where I was confused. I'm thinking log out meant take max out of there and get the other 2 to show up. Instead of just,
Oh, no, I'm
targeting
sorry.
max.
Log output, not log out. Sorry. When we say log out, we mean like, what is the output of the log? Sorry, I could have worded that better. I'm happy to stick around and answer questions as you guys are still working on this. Palash, I'm coming to yours next. But it is well past 8:30. You are welcome to get out of here. Keep in mind, I'm available for one-on-ones tomorrow. This is not due until Sunday. So if you want to bring questions to OpenHack, you can totally do that. I will stick around for a couple more minutes.
For some reason, a part of my code like freaking like grayed out.
Share screen. Okay, so you've got a star on 13 and 14 that is making it freak out. If you just take out those 2 stars, it will probably go back to working. You also have a multi-line comment that starts on 14 that you didn't close off. So if you just put like a /star or take that /star out, that will get you back to working. Rain, what's up?
I copy age in loops, but for some reason Prettier keeps on activating. I just wanted to take a quick look.
Share screen, take a look.
Okay.
Allie, you are totally right. That's why I can sit here and be so smug while you guys are learning this stuff. It's because once you know it, you know it. it's a steep learning curve, but once you get to that, okay. What is going on? Go back to your code for me, Rain.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. So yeah, I think it's because I have from GitHub copied when you started changing stuff up, perhaps. I don't know, but
Let me request a remote. What the heck is going on with that? Can you give me a remote?
Sure.
Is it?
Sorry.
Down. Here's. Comes
What's
down.
up?
That's a line. Sorry, I have to space it out manually in order to be able to like find where the error
What's their first
is.
son's name?
What's
What's their
that?
first son's name? That's the Rocky picked that. Rocky picked that. Because he's named after Rockin'.
I think the problem. There you go.
It was condensed when I copied out.
Yeah, and that's what threw it off. I think when I got a string back up on that one line, it fixed the issue.
Okay. One last thing. Every time I go live, it keeps on opening up in Safari versus Chrome, which it used to do.
I can fix that. Oh, you don't have Chrome installed
Yes.
in applications.
And you mentioned that before. So every time I restart my computer, I have to go back into my downloads and get Chrome again.
And are you putting it in applications?
I didn't. I really didn't. I should have.
That's the problem. Okay, so Chrome is here. And this whole arrow here is telling you to take Chrome and drag it into this folder.
And I can do it from right there?
Yep. So now it's copying it in, and you'll notice that when we go to applications, now Chrome is in here.
Okay.
So do you have it open now? Yeah,
I
you-
definitely.
So can I quit out of this? Or do you have tabs open that you want to save?
You can close whatever you like.
Okay.
You have all access.
I've had some people scream bloody murder when I close their tabs. Come on. Did that actually quit for me? No, it's going to be a little pain. Quit. Okay, fine. Want to fight? Let's fight.
My computer does that.
We're gonna do
Like overthinking what I need.
the questions intentionally get harder as we go. So
Okay.
like you are this line is technically making a variable, right? You use let, which is what's making it mutable. You name the variable, and then instead of just using a string or a number or something, you made it an object. But technically, this is meeting the assignment. But take a step back and be like, can I tell you why I made it an object?
Okay.
Right? If you're storing multiple key value pairs, it makes sense for it to be an object. But if you're looking at that and you're like, well, it's not wrong, but I still don't quite understand it, take a step back and see if you can simplify it a little bit. And then same for going down here, right? Like you are technically telling the computer to go find the person and make a copy of the person, then take the person's name and change it. Well,
right.
Technically you are changing the value of a variable of a key in an object, but I didn't ask you to do all of that, right? What I asked you to do is just change the name of the variable or change the value of the variable. So you're on the right track. You are meeting the requirements, but maybe a little bit more than what you intended to do.
Oh yeah, because I was just like, I didn't know what I really needed, so I was just trying to, I guess, make sure I covered all my bases.
All good.
If that makes
Good work.
All right, thank you so much, Max.
Goggin, what's up?
I'm kind of struggling here a little bit. Damn it, the thing is not working. The for off loop is not working. You want to have a look at it real quick?
Sure.
I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. I'm definitely doing something wrong. Okay. You see it?
Yes. So log out all of the students. Okay, so you're on the right track. What you need to do is tell the for loop to bury into all of that information, not necessarily the console log. So what we want to do is be careful here, because middle teacher isn't in elementary, middle teacher is in the school.
Cool. Oh, damn.
But you're on the right track. What we want to do here is say school.middle teacher, and then we want to get their students. That is
Okay.
going to give us each individual student, which we can then log out here.
Okay. So I would just, instead of doing it, okay, got it. All right. Maxtel. Okay. All right.
On the right track. You were peeling back the onion. You were just peeling back the onion at the wrong layer.
Okay. Jesus Christ. All
Check
right.
this out.
Thank you.
No problem.
Share this with you to make sure I'm doing it right.
Sure.
I am all the way on the right.
You are on the oh.
I know I
You
didn't
are the
do number
reason I
9
need
right.
to be more careful about how I write my questions. I was hoping on number 8 you would use a for loop, but technically you did meet the question, which was logging out all of their names. So I would have to technically give you full credit for that. But for number 9, that's not quite right, because what you're logging out is actually look at your output of number 9.
Yeah, I was going to 75. I haven't quite figured that one out yet.
That's the one that you want to use the banking example for, because you need a for loop and a sum variable.
Okay. And another thing is, can you share your screen again so I can screenshot and refer to it later?
No.
Oh, come on.
The good news is it is all in the recording,
On
but I'm going to make you
YouTube.
work for it.
Yeah, I knew you were.
Better to get the understanding and push yourself. And I will say, and this goes for everyone who has stuck around 20 full minutes after class ends, if you are not getting one of them, just leave a note and be like, this is what I was trying to do. I'm stuck here, and I'll respond to that. This is not a homework assignment where you need to get all 10 of them working. This is a homework assignment that you just need to try and do all 10 of them. Shannon, you're up.
Hi. So I'm on step 3 now. And when I keep trying to run it, I get this invalid or unexpected token.
Okay. Quite unexpected. Go ahead and share your screen. Okay, so I don't know if you did this intentionally, but you put a /* on line 14. And that is preventing anything else from under that running. So if you take that out and save, it should go back to running. Were you
Is it
expecting
supposed to-
something else?
What's that?
Were you expecting something else?
No. I think I thought I was, but I'm not.
Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. You guys were asking about ChatGPT. If you are curious about that, hit up the talk on Monday at 10:30, whatever I link to in the meetup. ChatGPT is like the most the most progress we've made with artificial intelligence, and it's at a level that consumers can now interact with it. But it does some really interesting things where you can ask it a pretty legitimate question and it will give you an answer. That answer is not always guaranteed to be right, but it can certainly get you thinking in the right direction, even if its answer is not totally right. And the vast majority of the time, the answer is right. The problem is it doesn't know whether or not the answer is right. But it will certainly, whenever you have something where you're like totally stuck and you wish you could ask someone, but I'm not available until tomorrow, definitely it's a great tool to play around with and write some queries. Can pose some interesting results.
There is also a Telegram bot you can have, and it's like right on your phone if you want to.
Telegram bot and Bard is Google's version of it. They all produce different results. I have definitely made it go off the rails, but you know, I was trying to. I've also used it to score some of your quiz responses, and that's super interesting because at first it was reluctant to do it, but if you craft the query in a certain way and say, would you consider this a right answer for this question? It will actually give you a pretty detailed response on that. So it's
crazy what she could make in response to. It was nuts. I was playing with it yesterday. I was on my stock app and I was like, you gotta say it, and it was like, hey, talk to me like a financial advisor as a novice, and what index funds would be the most. It gives you like a list. You have to just be very specific on how you speak to it. It's fun to play with.
Yeah, I'm now curious. Let me see if I can.
Hey, Max, I personally have to hop, but if everybody is good, have a good night. And if not, send me a Slack and I will bug Max to help you because I'm no good at this. He's got the loops. I can help with errors.
Like I'm just curious now. And then Allie, I'll come to you. If I do like in JavaScript, create a mutable variable that just answered the first question, which is, and not only did it answer it, but it gave you an explanation of why it's that. So very, very cool technology to play with. Allie, what's up?
Okay, so I think I'm confusing myself over here, but not like so much like I'm just looking over something. So I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Let me see. Okay, so what I have going on here is like I've created this object here, which I figured out. But like, so this is what I think this is where I'm having like my confusion. So this would be my two different data types, right?
The one and the core line are the two different data types. So you've technically met the requirements, but
Okay.
you are confusing yourself a little bit. Our library is going to have a list of books.
Okay, so that's what I was like. Okay.
Instead of an object, we're going to make that an array.
Okay.
Then each item in the array is going to be a book.
Ah, okay. All right. So the ID would be okay. Wow, thank you. Because this is what I was like. I'm so confused here.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It's confusing because you can put objects in arrays. You can also put arrays in objects, right? So it's like, it's easy to get lost in those two. But if you think about it as like, what am I storing a list of? And then what is each little thing inside of that list? You can think of the list as the array and then each thing inside that list as the object.
Okay, and then so what do I want to ask right here? Couldn't there be a way where I could do So like, let's say if I created like a bunch of objects like book 1, and then it had an ID in it with the name and the author, and I just created a bunch of objects like that.
Mhm.
Isn't there a way that like I could create a function that like if I make an empty array called library, I can just import all of my book objects into there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but is that like too advanced for like?
Most certainly.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure because I'm like, I know there's like it's got to be 2 different ways. And I feel like I'm trying to like write my code in a way that like incorporates both instead of just picking one and sticking to it.
I am not kidding you. I could answer your question of like, how can we import books from a file? I could spend an entire 3-hour class on different ways we could do that. And all 3 hours would go over your head until about halfway through the program, where you would get the first hour and the other 2 would go over your head. And then by the end of the program, you would get all 3 hours.
It's really like, I'm like, okay, but so which one would be like the easier? Because I'm so confused on what I did here. So I just created.
So technically 28 through 32 is everything that you need for number 6.
Okay.
Right. I like seeing you play around with different data structures and learning like how to format it. But number 6 was just saying create an object, which you did with the curly brace, that has at least 2 different data types for the values. So your first data type is a number for the ID key, and then your other data type is a string for the name key. Then you just added in another key value pair, which you didn't have to do, but it's totally fine.
Okay. And then just for like the sake of saying this, so
Yep.
I created a library object.
Nope.
Oh, library array. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Well, library list that has objects within them.
Yep.
Which have keys.
Yep.
And okay. All right. All right.
And values, and the 2 value types that you're using are a number and a string.
Okay. So I'll definitely just make some comments to myself, like, but thank you. I appreciate that for like the extra.
No problem. I'm seeing the light bulbs kind of go off in a chain reaction. So that's what I love to see.
Okay.
Last call for questions tonight.
Can you have a look at it again once? I'm just kind of
Yep.
stuck here a little bit. Just